Hi there. Welcome to Elevate Care. I'm your co-host, Liz Cunningham. In today's show, we'll be picking up part 2 of our short form series with Amy Rojas. If you haven't listened to part 1, I'd encourage you to head back and listen to it. All right, here's the episode.
So a slight bit of background for anybody that doesn't know me or hasn't seen a previous podcast. I spent many years in the commercial side of business and in very large businesses. So the IBMs and the Novartises of the world. So lived around the world in several different countries. So I've had a lot of experience with a lot of different people. And after many years, I had the opportunity to move into HR, which at the time was kind of shocking. And I said, why would I do such a thing? But then it became very clear to me that all the work that I had done to help companies be successful through their products really made sense to transition into helping companies be successful through their people. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what we sell or what we do. If the people aren't there to do it, you're not going to accomplish anything. So I got very passionate about branching out into my own consulting practice. And I focus on all things leadership, all things effective teams, and really just pinpointing that area where people can really benefit from their greatest asset, which is their people. So I do a lot of executive coaching. I do team interventions. I do all sorts of different programs that I facilitate. So anything that helps along those lines. So in my experience, and ironically or not ironically, through many of the roles that I held, I was very involved in large change. So massive acquisitions, both being acquired or acquiring, massive software overhauls in companies, process, you name it. So I just sort of change became my middle name. And I was very involved in my corporate life in all things change. And I learned very quickly that most changes don't work. There's a statistics out there, don't quote me on it, but it's something to the effect of 72% of changes fail. And we all know that we spend an inordinate amount of time and money and energy on changes to have them fail. And what I found is that watching this over the years is that where they normally fail is with the people. And not necessarily the system or the process or the software that you've purchased, but with the people, because you haven't brought them along. So to answer your question around change agility, if we can get people in the mindset of change is exciting, change is going to help us to achieve our vision, change is going to offer us opportunities to develop and grow. But also importantly is that change is not an event. It is a constant. We have to adopt a change mindset that expects change to come on a regular basis. And we have to put ourselves in a position of eliminating some of the emotional factors that come with change. So I spend a lot of time in my programs talking about one of the biggest derailers to change are the emotional pieces of it. I can't do what I've always done. I'm not going to know how to do this. My job might be in jeopardy. How am I going to get it all done now that I have this new thing to do as well? So really at the core of it is a lot of the emotional piece. And if you can establish a core emotional view to the excitement of change and what it brings, it makes a complete difference and really gets people excited about moving forward. Does it make change not hard? Of course not. It is hard, but it makes you be able to work through the hard a lot easier. I'm a bit of a broken record when it comes to this and all the work that I do, but you really have to have a clear vision. And ultimately, your vision should be at the top and it shouldn't change much. Things may come, into play underneath the vision that have to change the path. But ultimately, your vision should stay pretty clear. That's where people are going to trust you and they're going to continue to understand why different things happen to help get there. So having a very clear vision is at the core of what you need to be able to do. Being able to communicate it well. And then when things occur, because they will, you have to be able to articulate why this change is going to help us make that vision come true. So we were on this path. This is still our ultimate goal, but we're going to have to make a right turn to get to that goal now. So job number one is to make sure that that vision is really clear and that you stay true to it. And so the second piece of it is exactly that, is really being able to, what I call a reason to believe, or a marketing term, WIFM, of what's in it for me. Everyone has to have a reason to believe. And often when I work with organizations, I sort of get this, not quite an eye roll, but sort of a, how do you create that for everyone? Well, you actually can if you do the work. If you really think about, ultimately, this vision is going to take us all in a different direction. It's going to allow us to grow as a company. It's going to allow you to grow as an employee. It's going to give us better bonuses. Whatever it is. there are reasons that people are there. And if you can expand on those and give them more, then that's ultimately their connection to the vision. But as you go down through the different activities that need to occur to reach that vision, people have to understand why their work in each one of those is going to affect the ultimate goal, why other people are relying on them, why they have a stake in the game to be able to make a difference. And it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway, I think having a clear understanding of the purpose of the company, what do we actually do for people? How do we make a difference is also important. So purpose and culture are a big part of this as well. But back to what I was saying, making sure that there's a connection for each person at some level with a reason to believe or a WIFM for why we need to make whatever change it is to achieve our ultimate goals. It's absolutely essential that a leader is confident and comfortable in their own vision, in their connection to the vision. People can read immediately if they're not on board. I have been in many situations with very senior leaders where I'm being asked to enact something, and I look around the room and see that people aren't even engaged. And I've stopped conversations and said, if we're not all on the same page, nobody else in the organization is going to be. They're very smart people and they will see right through us. So the very first thing a leader has to do is be comfortable in their own vision. Who do they want to be? Why are they there? And how does their vision, their personal vision, individual, connect with the company vision? And people should be able to feel that. They should know that it exists. Without it, as I said, they'll see right through you and they won't be interested in engaging. The other thing I would say is, I say this a lot and people sometimes chuckle a little when I say it, but the notion of lonely at the top is very true. So the higher up you get in an organization, the more difficult it is because you have fewer people that you can be vulnerable with. You have fewer people that you can talk about the issues and the problems. And everybody is looking at you to succeed. So more expectations, more pressure, and less of a support network, less of people to turn to say, oh, this isn't going well, or I need some help. Because you don't want to appear to your people that you don't know what you're doing, or you don't know how to get something done, or that there's a problem. So a couple things with that. First of all, vulnerability is very powerful. People will have a much higher level of trust if you are able to actually be vulnerable and say, you know what, I'm not sure how we're going to get this done. So vulnerability is very important. The second thing I would say is I'm a very much of a values-based coach. And so I think it's very critical that everybody understands what are their own personal values. Why are you there? Is it the title? Is it the money? Is it the opportunity to do the work you're doing? Is it to change the world? There are so many different values that come into play with us in the workforce. And I think we need to know what those are. We need to be really clear. So there's a couple of exercises that I do with people that I work with to absolutely nail what those are and to laminate them, put them somewhere where they absolutely need to stay true to them so people know it. And you become more consistent that way and people can trust you more often. And then the last thing I'll say is in terms of a support network, knowing who you can rely on, knowing who you can be vulnerable with. And often there are one or two people in your organization, and often there are several people outside of your organization that you can just really turn to when times get tough, when you have that feeling of, I can't let everybody know that I'm having a hard time, but I'm human and I'm having a hard time, because we all do it. And so I think that notion of lonely at the top is important, and knowing what to do about it is very important. One of the things that's going back to what we were talking about a second ago, I think just expanding on that, I think having the clarity of values and the authenticity are very important. It's also important to gauge your risk tolerance. And what I mean by that is if your vision's way up here and your values are really clear for what you want to get out of achieving that vision, you have to be clear within yourself about how far you're willing to go to get it. And so some people get very risk intolerant, and so they're not willing to take the steps that need to happen, and your people can see that. And so you have to be prepared for how you want to communicate that, or again, vulnerability is kind of at the core of it. So I would say that's another critical factor of thinking about that one. I tell people all the time, and I don't know, sometimes I make the connection between parents and a family. I often ask people how many people in the room have children, because it translates. But if you're a parent or a leader, either one, and you have it all together, you're always right because you don't want people to see that you are fallible. that you are, have very high values, but you're willing to take a lot of risk, people will be afraid. People will be concerned. That's a difficult person to be around. But because you don't know how you can stack up. So you're trying to be the best you can be for those people, but by being the best you can be, you're making them feel like they can never be that. And so if you become vulnerable and you're willing to say, I made a mistake, or I don't know how to do this, or this is really hard, let's get through it together, or whatever those things are, showing that vulnerability, people will see you as a human being and they'll relate to you so much better, and they will be far more willing to go through that path with you to get to whatever the goal is. One of my favorite questions ever to ask in any, myself or in any of the groups that I work in is, what else could be true? Again, we bring all of these experiences with us. I should also say that as a leader, we have such pressure to succeed that sometimes we're so focused on the need to succeed that we don't realize that we're actually human and we are fallible. And being able to be that, as you say, to your team, the pie in the face moments, gives them the permission to maybe not succeed every time, which then breeds innovation, which then breeds trust, which then breeds engagement. So it goes a really long way to be able to say, I'm really struggling. I got a pie in the face. So I can't iterate that enough to people to be able to feel like you do not have to know it all. And I also say that the very best leaders are the ones that don't know what their team does. Because we hire experts to be our team. Again, one of the biggest evolutions in leadership, and also one of the places that leaders fail the most often, is going from being a doer to a leader. So we have spent years and years and years in our career getting accolades and promotions and success and rewards for doing things. And then we reach a point where we're leading teams, and we're leading teams that are leading teams, and our essence of doing, not to say that we're not doing, because we're doing at every level, but becomes less and less. And we have to rely on other people to do the doing. And that is so hard to do because we know how to do it. We know what works. We have a fear if they don't get it correct, it's going to reflect badly on us. And so really being able to let go of that and being the leader that knows that you are all experts in your area. I am not. So I rely on you to be that expert. I empower you to be that expert and bring it to me. And then we'll pull it all together to have the best of everybody's experience. There is not a change that happens that doesn't have issues. Show me a change that's perfect. It just doesn't happen. And oftentimes the mistake or the issue may be at the very top with the decision of how we chose to put this in place. And being able to own that rather than having all of your people sitting at their desk just, completely stressed over how do I get this done when I know that we need to make a change is really very difficult. And so I was also going to add to what we were talking about in terms of being able to be vulnerable and show that we are not infallible is asking for feedback. So we talk about feedback a lot in one way, but for me, feedback is two-way. And not just because we want the feedback, but because we want our teams to know that what they know and see is valuable to you, and that you're open and willing to change things and do better, and that you know that you don't do anything perfectly. So you really welcome and want their feedback. So, I advocate for feedback always with your team members across the board, but I also advocate for creating a culture where they are very comfortable and you actually ask them for feedback as well. I think if we go back to the one team, one vision, if we're owning each other's success and we're also dealing with the trust factors of the various types of ways that we should be able to rely on each other, then we should be able to have those conversations. We've made a commitment. And if it's not working, and this then also connects back to the feedback model. So having a really effective, non-emotional way to give feedback that doesn't have to feel like the end of the world and completely critical. It's very constructive. So all of these things are connected at the end of the day. And people want to be empowered. They want to grow. They want an opportunity. If the culture allows it, they want an opportunity to fail. They want to try things and learn from them. So empowering them and not showing them how to do it and not doing it for them and saying, I trust you. You were hired to do this and I trust you to do it. Let me know if you need my help. I'm here if you need it. I think the single biggest thing around this whole notion of change and vision is to really think of it as a mindset. We need to do away with our old tapes that say it's an event, it's a from here to there, it's an initiative. It's not. It's a constant. And being able to put all of these things in place will help make that constant be a lot more effective and a lot more bearable.
Thank you for joining us today on Elevate Care. If you found this episode valuable, please consider sharing it with a colleague and subscribing to our show on your favorite podcast platform. You can learn more about this episode and our show on our website at amnhealthcare.com, and follow us on social media to stay updated on new episodes and the ever-changing world of healthcare.